welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you are new. Hello, new person. I talk about books and writing, and today I am talking about creativity again. It's been a bit of a running theme this month, creating when times are hard, things like that, getting back on the horse, because it's been a weird old couple of months. But this is actually inspired by something I went through at the weekend, and it's about creativity needing limits. So I'm going to start off with a little story of how I got to making this video and what inspired it. And I'm going to tell a couple of other little stories as well that are about not me. So I want to write for this publishing house. I really, really want to write for this publishing house. Like, I'd give my left leg. Okay, that one's got cool tattoos. So was my right. I'd give someone's left leg to write for these people, right? And So before I decided to go and start turning my idea into a full novel, I wanted to go and look at the rules. Like, what were they after? Because here's the thing. Publishing houses have rules. You are not going to turn up to, someone who specialises in horror and say, here is my romance, because you ain't going to get picked. And this publishing house in particular, and I'm not going to say who it is, have very strict rules. They deal with pre-established IPs as well. So you're kind of thinking like D&D, Magic the Gathering, World of Warcraft, Warhammer, that, like that kind of thing. They've got books as well. So, these people all have strict rules. And it makes sense because obviously a lot of people want to write for these. And they're going to get a lot of stuff come in. And they want to make sure that they only get people who are going to do the job they need them to do. So, I looked up the rules. And the first thing was, you have to use their characters. You can't create your own. Basically, what they're essentially saying was no fan fiction. It's got to be factions that pre-exist and races that pre-exist, because it's fantasy, And, it's all stuff that pre-exists. No fan fiction, no, like, creating all of this stuff for yourself. The towns, the cities, the places, whatever. You have to play within their strict framework. Makes perfect sense, because otherwise it's fan fiction. It's not there for, it's headcanon. It's not like the pre-established canon. Unfortunately, I had a character who was my own creation, who was, going to tell their story. It did not affect the huge world, in a big way, but it was a character that I had created, and suddenly it looks like they don't want it. The other thing was, you had to prove that you could write for them with 2 pieces of flash fiction. And again, fitting within those rules. And I came up with something while reading the rules, which was fucking buck wild to me because I wasn't expecting that. And it was actually really cool to see that suddenly when I was in, all these limits were imposed on me, ones that I was not always expecting. I mean, the characters I was not expecting. I thought, as long as it doesn't affect too much at large, you can have a bit more wiggle room with characters. No, thought wrong. But I suddenly was like, oh, well, there's this really cool character and I like what they do. And I was like, all of these ideas. And suddenly I was like, I've actually got like a short story. I've got a piece of flash fiction here. All because of these like mad limits of you can only play with our toys in the way we tell you to. And I just thought that was actually pretty neat. And I was discussing it with my partner, and even he was like, yeah, there's a cool idea there, and do it. Well, all they can do is tell you suck. I was like, so yeah, anyway, right. That was kind of where I went with it. Now, it's all well and good. Some, Little Miss only published copy and blogs saying these things about like limitations are so good and all these wonderful things come out of it. But what about some actual published real grown-up examples? I've got one, and it's a favourite of mine. So in D&D, they have a lot of novels and a lot of people writing for them. And they have done for donkey's years because it's been around for a while. And one of those writers is R.A. Salvatore. Is it Salvatore or Salvatore? I think it might be Salvatore. And he writes the Drizzt Word novels. But the story of how he got to writing those is actually a pretty cool little story that is 100% relevant to this. So, he approached the people who create D&D and said, like, look, I want to write for you, I want to write for you. And they're like, okay. So can I write about this fantasy race? And they went, no, we've already got someone telling those stories. They're off limits, he's under contract. What about these people? No, you can't write about them either. And it basically got to a point of like, is there anything available? And he was like, okay, what about the Drow? Can I talk about the Dark Elves? Can I tell stories about the Dark Elves? Because he's been through everything fucking else. And they were like, I mean, yeah, sure, no one cares about them. No one's writing about them because no one really wants them. They're just like a generic villain almost. That, okay, we can occasionally use them as a bit of a big bad and there's not what's going on with them. And he went off and he told the Dritz to word and stories. And they are freaking brilliant. They are so well written. The characters I love Dritz. Dritz is just wonderful. I know more about Dritz than I know about D&D as a whole. That's where my knowledge of D&D largely comes from. That and the film that came out a couple of years ago that I really enjoyed. But all of that came from these really strict limitations. Proving actually they're a good thing. And look, if you are telling stories, you need limitations. Now, when I was a copywriter, I had strict limitations. There was words and phrases and things I could not use because I was going to get a hell of a smack on the wrist, and if I kept doing it, they would have kicked me out and said, you can't work here anymore because you can't do the job. Limits exist. I couldn't use words like enjoyable because of what I was writing about. And so I had to find ways of saying, this is really nice without saying, this is really nice. And it's tough, but it gets you creative. And limits exist because genres have them. If you write a romance, and I mean romance, not a love story, there is a difference. You're going to have a happy ever after, or your readers are going to feel shortchanged and grumpy. And rightly so. I read a book that read like a romance once, didn't have a romantic happily ever after ending, and it made me hate the book. I was really enjoying it up until that last chapter. That last chapter killed it. Anyway, so you've got these limits, whether it is, you have to have certain things happen within a story. If you write a monster horror and then don't have a monster, you're not writing a monster story for a start, but there are rules to play by. Whatever it is, if you're writing a fantasy story, magic has to have limitations. Otherwise, it's like, well, if someone does magic, they're basically a god. And gods don't really tell great stories because they can do whatever the heck they like. If you do write a story about a god, and I've tried, you have to find a way to put limits on them. Otherwise, there is no story. Oh, something's peed them off. Okay, bonk with the, omnipotent magic. Bonk. And the story's over. Find ways to put in limits and you've got stories anyway. And limits on creativity stop your brain from scattering off to the winds and going, I don't even know where to begin because there's 1,000 things to pick from. And you're just paralysed by choice. It's not fun. I've been there where it's I want to tell a story. That's great. I mean, any idea what story? I just want to tell a story. My brain's got nothing. But if I say I want to tell a story about, set in a place, it's set in London, witchcraft. Suddenly I can start pulling ideas out. So, if someone sits there and goes, here are all the art supplies in the whole wide world. It's a very big table. You can build whatever you like. Create whatever you like. You just got to create something. And your brain just goes you might eventually, pick a couple of bits up. But then you're sitting there going, well, what am I going to create with this handful of stuff that I've chosen? But if someone says, glue, popsicle sticks, build me something that looks like a house, suddenly your brain laser-like focuses and you'll build a little house. I mean, it might kind of suck because it might not be in your skill set, but you'll build it more than, you'll build that faster than if you're sitting there going, I don't even know what to build. So there is something there to be said for limits. Limits are great. Limits are useful and helpful and all the good shit. So where does that leave my story with my character that I've created? My little original idea that suddenly doesn't seem so welcome. you know, I'm still going to do it. Because it's just made me really determined that I can prove that I'm good. If I can prove I'm good and get my foot in the door and say, look, you've had some of my short stories and you know that they're good. You've had, you know, a novel and it's been published and you know that I'm good. Here's this idea I've been sat on since the beginning. Here is this character. I can, you know, I've got a little bit of clout maybe to say, look, here it is. Trust me. Because I can prove myself. And sometimes it is just a case of proof. You know, look, I wouldn't be the first person who's had to tell one story to be able to tell the story they want to. It's pretty common. You know, it's like, look, here is something that's commercial and we know will sell. Now, let me use my name a little bit and prove to you that I've got a good story here. It happens, and maybe it can happen for me. Why not? It happens for other people. So, yeah, that's all I've got for you today. Wish me luck with my storytelling. My Substack is now live. It is under the name Aurora Powling, funnily enough. And I'm going to link it down below in the comments or whatever. And yeah, if you found this video enjoyable or entertaining or helpful or anything, give it a like. If you've got something to add to the comment, a writer who has, you know, maybe had to jump through hoops, whose story I have not told, because obviously I only really told one, do leave that in the comment below and share your little, writer stories about IPs that have gone in a similar direction. And yeah, if you have enjoyed this video as well and you want to see more of me and you are not subscribed, do hit the subscribe button. It is a huge help because, you know, this channel is very small and it helps me fight the evil algorithms, because let's face it, we hate algorithms, right? We want to fight them, we want to win, we want to beat these things. Yeah, gotta defeat the machines. Anyway, right, yeah, so give us a subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you again next week. Take care, guys. Bye.